What is going on, and welcome to another episode of the Time Killers podcast. My name is Neil Rivera, and I'm killing time once again with Mr. Matthew Field. What is going on, Matthew?
Just another day in paradise.
Just another day in paradise, and we are joined for the first time by a friend of the show, Mr. Bruce Burhans. How you doing, Bruce?
Hey, what's good? Thank you so much for having me.
We are so thrilled to have you here with us talking Ghost of Yotei, among other things, but that, of course, is the biggest game that is out that everyone is talking about. So let's just jump right into it, guys. This is obviously Sucker Punch Productions, the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, which is the PlayStation 4 game. Came out in 2019, I believe. So this is, 5-6 years after that. Set 300 years or so in the future, so it's a different time period, different area, but more or less the same thing, right? It's you're more samurai open world action. This one it stars Atsu, which is a new character played by Erika Ishii, and let's just go round robin here, and I'm gonna, basically say like how long we've been playing the game, and then, I guess top level thoughts, and we'll go from there. Bruce, let's start with you. How much have you played? About where are you, and how are you feeling about the game so far?
I would say that I'm definitely right around a little bit over a dozen or so hours in. I've honestly spent a lot of time exploring, looking for secrets, and doing a lot of the side quest, but going back to the main story, it's been starting to get me hooked into it, and I should be trying to get to the Kitsune pretty soon here.
Yeah. And how are you feeling about it, like top level so far?
I'm really enjoying it. I honestly have a pretty big background in history, and so this era of Japan, like that early Edo period, and like right after like the Sengoku period, is some of my personal favorite. And I think it's a really interesting take that they kind of went for a more intimate story around this set time period, which is, you don't often see that. Usually it's something around like Nobunaga. And so I've really enjoyed a lot of the performances that I've been seeing, and it's hard to believe this is Sucker Punch's 11th game, and they are just killing it. This really does feel like a great reason to bust out the PlayStation 5. It's a fantastic exclusive. I am playing it on a 4K OLED, like 75-inch TV of surround sound, and I am loving it. However, I have been keeping it on Kurosawa mode, so I am really interested to hear what everyone else thinks about the voice acting and the directions, because it's been kind of difficult at times in black and white. But it's been wonderful so far. I'm really enjoying it, and this is something that I'm really looking forward to hear what everyone else's opinions are with, especially with Ghost of Tsushima, because that's a game that I actually do not have a whole bunch of experience in.
Awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned the your interest, particularly in the historical period. So I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on it as we get into it. Matthew, how about you? Where are you in the game so far, and top level? Where are you? How are you feeling about it?
I am probably just about 14 or 15 hours in. I think I'm also heading after the Kitsune next. I've other than the tutorial Yotei 6 member that you end up killing, I've not managed to take down any of the other ones yet. But the Kitsune, it looks like it's going to be the second one on my list. I am quite enjoying it. Probably more so than I expected to, for reasons we can pick apart here. But yeah, I am enjoying it quite a bit. The world is luring me in more than I expected it to. Given that I, between playing Assassin's Creed Shadows earlier this year and trying out Ghost of Tsushima for the first time over the summer, I'm narrowing in on over like 100 hours in Japan this year, so I was wondering how fatigued I was going to be, but yeah, so far Yotei has kept my attention.
That's good. That makes me feel a little better too. Because yeah, I mean, I was interested to see where you would land with it, given that you played Assassin's Creed Shadows. You were hyping it up a good bit. Bruce, did you play Shadows at all? Just so I have an idea of like where your frame of reference is.
So I have not. No, I have not played
Okay.
Assassin's Creed Shadows, even though, funny enough, I know it does the exact opposite of what I just mentioned earlier, where it is focused on those really big set pieces in the Sengoku area, with like Nobunaga being like a pretty prominent character. At least historical parts are featured in it, as you would expect, hopefully, in those kinds of games.
No, yeah, no, definitely. I was, yeah, no, I didn't play it either. So yeah, I was like, I knew Matthew coming into this, like it was going to be an interesting conversation about like how it compares, especially we've got two, like essentially open world samurai games coming out within months of each other. And for all intents and purposes, like it seems like the, you know, like narratively, they're very similar, like open world wise, they're similar. So Matthew, I'll be interested to see or to hear, how you know like the two sort of stack against one another. I'm kind of in the same spot as you, Bruce. So I took down the Oni last night. So he, outside of the snake, which is the tutorial member of the Yotei 6, that's the only member that I've killed. So kind of like you guys, running around enjoying the open world. And yeah, I've waffled a bit. It's kind of a slow burn for me, where I think the more I play it, the more I grow to love it and enjoy it. It makes a very weird, I won't say bad, but it makes a really weird first impression. It kind of just thrusts you into everything. And having not played Ghost of Tsushima in a while, it took me a while to adjust, and like the tutorialization of stuff is just weird. But the more I play it, the more I enjoy it, the more I like soak, like the I guess like the main takeaway coming into this one is like the more I play it, the more I feel like this is the game I wanted Red Dead Redemption 2 to be, where like I feel like Red Dead Redemption 2 got a little too bogged down in the systems and the complexities and how stuff like interacted with one another, whereas this like isn't afraid to be a video game, but it still has like that same sense of place, and like you don't know what you're going to run into when you're going from point A to point B. So yeah, no, I mean, I think the open world is a good place to start here. Like, obviously, like this is taking place in the fictional, I guess, what is it, the country or, you know, area called Yotei. So, I mean, yeah, how do we feel about, you know, just traversal, moving around the open world and just like the different open world activities? Matthew, I'll start with you.
I think it's pretty, for the most part, pretty good. Looking back at Tsushima, I think one of the reasons why it didn't really click with me was because the world, it just didn't feel interesting to me. Like Tsushima as a locale didn't really have very many distinct elements to it, which in turn made me not really want to spend extra time in it searching around for optional activities and stuff, which I think it's hard for me to separate the quality of those side activities versus like my desire to seek them out and engage with them. So I think while some of the activities are pretty similar, like you still, you know, can walk around and just find a new cosmetic for your sword there or whatever, or chase a fox and you know, get a charm or whatever. They've been expanded slightly, and maybe they feel a little bit more bespoke than they did in Tsushima, but fundamentally you're doing the same things. I just think it's a little bit more effective because the locations in the world in Ezo are just more compelling to me than any of the places that Tsushima took us.
Yeah, I actually think the open world structure, like the activities you're doing, like I was kind of disappointed and like feel like they're kind of a little uninspired. I think the main difference that I'm noticing is like the shamisen, learning different songs, versus that seems to have replaced like the writing the haikus as Jin. But for the most part, like you're going to the bamboo stands and like smacking them, chopping them up. Like you're doing like the same more or less mini games. But like I think the added benefit here is that like this area, like this continent, Yotei as a place, just feels so much more alive and like true, I would say true to the era, but Bruce, I'll defer to you. How does it feel from your perspective, like, in capturing the era and like, I guess from a settings perspective, like, how do you feel about it?
So I actually really enjoy how immersive it is. That's one thing that I wasn't necessarily expecting going into it, because I did not play a whole lot of Ghost of Tsushima. So I was not really sure going into it how they were going to handle it, especially with some conventions that, some things may be slightly outdated as far as, an open world game for 2025. But for me personally, I enjoyed that there was not a whole bunch of, map markers. The HUD was not very intrusive. I actually enjoyed that it favored like organic discovery on the map. And that's just to go back to like when you mentioned Red Dead Redemption 2 a little bit ago, it is the opposite of that in the sense of I feel like it was a completely fresh start for them. And I felt like they almost had their like shackles taken off as far as they didn't need it to feel safe. I thought it was definitely interesting, and it's very accurate as far as with the area is now called like Hokkaido, and it's at this point it was not fully integrated into Japan, and so there was a lot of indigenous people, and it also was like the Wild West, where like this was the place for refugees, for pirates, for anyone that was fleeing the Tokugawa like shogunate. This was the place you needed to go. Because the mainland was becoming more isolationist. And so I thought it was a natural place to have this game. I know that like the mountain area is obviously beautiful and gorgeous, and the biomes in this game really reflect that, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I've been having a great time just stumbling upon Quest. I feel like the cultural depth, it feels very authentic. Obviously, Sucker Punch is not a Japanese studio, but they've been recognized by lots of game critics and studios in Japan for their authenticity. And a lot of the representation down to like hairstyles and even like Atsu and like the way they're portraying her as like a female warrior is honestly really great. And it's been very interesting seeing that instead of something a bit more tropey, and obviously this does lean into a lot of historical tropes and just things that we've seen before in movies or also just in games, especially from the same studio or from Sony. But it's been very cool to see this like coastal, like snowy frontier and all the folklore, and honestly still finding ways to find itself like a new identity, separating itself from like Tsushima. It's been very interesting seeing the journey that I've played through as far as finding things on the map for me.
Yeah, no, talking like to the like the presentation of it, like obviously like it's gotten such high marks for just the art direction and the style, but like I forgot how Western inspired Ghost of Tsushima was, and like I think based on like your characterization of the setting and the era, I feel like that they're really leaning into it, and it's definitely paying off. And toward like I said, like the game game I find myself going most toward here is Red Dead Redemption 2, just in terms of just the NPCs. Like, there's always all these sorts of interesting, interactions that you're having with the NPCs, and you really get the sense that like this is just like what life was like during this period under this, under these conditions, and like you really sympathize and empathize with just like the people of this area as a whole, not just Atsu, who I would say is the strongest performance by far in the story like that I've encountered so far. How do you guys feel, Matthew? How are you feeling so far about like the narrative, the story, the setup, and then like the performances so far?
So yeah, going back to what I want to just quickly touch on what you were talking about with, how Yotei feels as a location. I think one of the reasons why it feels so good is because it is a perfect match for what they're trying to do with the narrative here. I mean, they're, everybody knows at this point, like samurai are like the samurai stories are like the original Westerns, which is probably why you're getting those Red Dead Redemption vibes as well here. But this is, it's a revenge story. It's a Wild West revenge story essentially, and that fits with the like sort of Wild West location of Japan here. Compared to Tsushima, this feels much less tamed. Like there's just a lot more open expanse. I think it's pretty telling that you get speed boosts by running through flowers, because like there's just not really that many roads or anything that you should be following here. So all of that makes for like a really good fusion, and it all just makes it feel like a much more cohesive than I thought Tsushima did, which, first of all, I didn't think that Jin was nearly as compelling a character as Atsu is so far. I'm not sure if it comes down to the performance or just the way the character is sort of written, with Jin being a more rigid samurai character, especially towards the beginning. But also in the way that narrative was I didn't really feel like the open world nature of Tsushima fit that well with it basically trying to tell a war story with the Mongol invasion. But yeah, going back to Yotei, I think, again, I'm still pretty early on in the narrative, but I like the vibes it's going for. I think the big question is going to be whether those vibes can sustain the game over its runtime. Going back to Red Dead, a game that I absolutely loved, the biggest complaint I had about it was that the lack of character growth and narrative evolution over its like pretty massive runtime. It never really changed course or veered too far away from its originally stated, what you could see coming from the very beginning. And I think if Yotei just sticks to, okay, you're going to go hunt down these other 5 guys, and well, that's it. I think if there's no other element or twist to that, I'm going to feel a little disappointed despite it being an excellent setup. I'm also looking for something to grow out of that. And it remains to be seen if it'll have that or not.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because like I keep going back and forth between how I feel about this compared to Tsushima, where like I feel ultimately that Atsu is a more likable character. The more time I've spent with her, just the more I've got, like, they've done such a good job of just characterizing her in every opportunity that they get. Whereas Jin, he was very stoic, he was very static, and he kind of just, was a cardboard, piece of cardboard, for lack of a better term. But I do find myself thinking, being a little bit further in the story, I had the same concerns that you did there. I was like, oh man, like I feel as though like I'm just gonna go hunt these dudes down, and like I'm, like I know how this is gonna play out. And I got the hint at some of what like the later themes are, and obviously like we'll see where this thing goes. But it does seem like they're trying to layer on something else. I don't know if I'm going to resonate with it as strongly as I did with the like, I guess, sort of the themes that they tackled with Ghost of Tsushima, where like I feel like the main conflict being, Jin and his uncle, like I thought that was the most compelling part of that story, whereas I feel like ultimately, and this is, I'm trying not to spoil too much about where the story of Ghost of Yotei is, at least where I'm at, but it seems like Ghost of Yotei I'm still going to remember just as a revenge story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that is ultimately, whether there's another twist or not, that's how the game is built, and that's how it's set up. So yeah, I think it makes sense regardless of what else happens for that to be the predominant memory and narrative thrust. But it all comes down to the execution, I think, which maybe segues into like the open world design here that you're talking about. Like what they're not really breaking new ground in terms of what the open world structure is with this game. They're just putting their own stamp on the same model that Tsushima used, the same model that a lot of open world games use these days with you get into an area, there's a bunch of side stuff, it doesn't really impact the main story, maybe tangentially, but like you can do it in any order. The world isn't changing, a whole lot.
And there's a noticeable like production dip too. Like I'm getting like, in Final Fantasy 16 where like those side missions were just so poorly voiced and written, and like could just like the voice work here, and at least in terms of like the side content, it's like you could tell like this was just meant to pad it out. And like, there's a considerable drop off between that and like the main content.
Yeah, and I mean, some of it stands out. Like there's been a couple of side, little side quests, or just like, I don't know if you guys got to like a humorous little bit where this guy wants to like fight you for some woman's hand in marriage, and he's like set up these smoke bombs to go off to intimidate you. But I mean, it's kind of it's very tongue in cheek. Did you encounter that?
I don't think I've done that one in particular, but I've gotten ones with the similar vibe.
Yeah, and I think those have been nice change of paces. And like some of the larger side quests that like give you armor or something like that have been pretty good. But yeah, I mean, to your point, there's also been a number where it's just like, all right, this is here to give me something minor and to be a point on the map, and that's what I take away from it.
So this is where I'm interested in the like comparisons to Assassin's Creed Shadows specifically, because I personally feel like there's a pacing issue with the game, and I think some of the open world design and some of the bloat, like I think there's some bloat there. I don't think it's an egregious amount, but even like when we're talking about main quest lines, like just the to get to and eventually kill the Oni, it definitely felt like there was a little bit more padding in there than I would have liked, on top of like just all the extra open world activities. So Matthew, how do you feel so far about just the that portion of the open world, but then like how does it compare in your mind to something like an Assassin's Creed, where like Ubisoft is using that really like honed in traditional Ubisoft formula?
I think I think comparing these games is like a whole conversation into its own, and one that I can't speak to fully yet, not having clocked enough hours with Yotei to see how it kind of changes over its runtime. I mean, these are both extremely beefy games, it seems. But to the specific point you made about like feeling bloat to get to one of these characters, I think what I will say is that these characters, at least based on what I'm seeing with like the Kitsune, and what they're sort of the way they're building up Saito. I think Saito is the head, right?
Yeah, Lord Saito.
Lord Saito, yeah. The way they're really building up their characters and like fleshing out like everything that they're doing. I would say that's a little bit more effective here. I mean, it's similar to what they were doing with the core ring of bad guys in Shadows. I mean, because if you haven't played Assassin's Creed Shadows, the setup is almost exactly the same. The main character's father is killed by a bunch of masked, bandits, and then you go on a revenge quest to track them down. Except there's like 12 in Shadows. As versus like 6, maybe it's 10. I don't know, something like that.
That double sounds about right for a Ubisoft game.
Yeah, but to that point, like you don't have to spend 10 hours to get to the next one. Yeah. They're spaced out a little bit better to where you don't really feel like you're going in a huge stretch without making any like checking any boxes off that core list. So I mean, I think it's pretty similar, but I didn't get that feeling that you're referring to of bloat at least in that particular element of the main story in Shadows. I mean, there's definitely bloat in some other areas, which is, to be expected, but, at least when it comes to tracking down like the main story, villains, I think you don't go quite as long as you do, here in Yotei.
Yeah, that was I mean, and maybe it's just that particular arc, but like that was one thing I noticed was that like the I feel like maybe it was prolonged a little bit longer, and it just felt like they weren't adding anything interesting there. There was, to keep it vague, right? Like there was an encounter, he escaped, and you had to do a couple, there was like a MacGuffin or, a person you had to track down to then set up the final encounter. And then you kind of had to find out, like the big conclusion. And, I kind of felt myself towards the end of it thinking like, oh man, like if this is the same, like sort of like loop for all of these, like this is going to get old. Like I feel like I'm going to be, bored not bored, but like I think I'm going to be, ready to be done by the time I'm close to wrapping up. Cause it just seems like, I think the narrative isn't really supporting it enough to sort of justify like ping ponging you around more. So yeah, maybe like the main story picks up and kicks up here in like in the back half, but I definitely think like the strength, at least in the first half, is Erika Ishii's performance and just like really making Atsu this likable character. Like she says a lot without saying, like she's a very like short spoken character. It's like almost like she speaks in grunts. But like, she communicates so much with just, those little voice lines. So I gotta give her a tip of the hat. Bruce, you mentioned that you were playing in, Furukawa mode. I have been playing in Watanabe mode, which I highly recommend for anyone who just needs to decompress and chill out. This is essentially the one that they partnered with. If I'm not mistaken, this is the creator of Afro Samurai. I forget his like name, but his obviously Watanabe is the last name. It's essentially.
Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo.
There it is. Perfect. Thank you. But yeah, he essentially, it's essentially lo-fi hip hop. You're just chilling in the open world, riding around to these just like really cool, like curated beats. And I think they do a good job. Like, I think the thing with the Furukawa mode is that it's so in your face, right? Like, it's black and white and they're speaking in Japanese, and like, it's very like, you have to commit to doing it. Whereas my initial concern with the Watanabe mode that didn't come to fruition was it's very like, it's very out of the way. Like, it fades in, it fades out. Like, they'll, you know, if it's a really intense story moment, like, it stays out of the way of the stuff that you really want to pay attention to. But then once you're just like riding around on the horse in the, you know, the big open fields, like, it's just kicking up with the lo-fi chill hop. And I personally couldn't think of a better way to experience this game. So I highly recommend you at least try out that mode.
Yeah, also shout out to Miike mode, which Takashi Miike is best known for very bizarre, graphically violent movies, like Ichi the Killer. He's done Dead or Alive, not the one people associate with, but also 13 Assassins. He's done a lot of movies that are very over the top. And so in that mode, yeah, it's like when you're walking, mud is just everywhere. Everyone's dirty. And like the moment you slice anybody at all, there is 3 times the amount of blood just exploding everywhere. And you can combine them. And so, yeah, if you do Miike mode and Wanatabe mode, then honestly, that's very similar in spirit to like Samurai Champloo, where it was like, the moment someone gets slashed, it is like half of their body's worth of blood just everywhere.
Awesome.
Which is kind of a fun composition that you can mix and match. Because that's one thing that I actually really enjoyed as far as the game's delivery, is that you can toggle any of this on and off. So even if you wanted the Kurosawa mode, but you want it in English, you can do that. I have been going for just pure Kurosawa mode. And I'm sure I will switch it over at some point. Supposedly the game from, this is sources from How Long to Beat, is that main story is about 24 hours, main story and side missions is about 40 hours. So I might be at that point soon where I might want to switch it and knock out some side quest with Erika Ishii, whom I love, with their performances and Dropout and everything. But also it's a much different vibe, I think. Faraze, she's been, her interpretation of the character has been really interesting. I'm not as familiar with her other work. It's lots of different anime. I think her most prominent one's probably she is in she plays JoJo in Stone Ocean and is also Power in Chainsaw Man. But her delivery has been excellent. It has felt like watching I again, obviously it's intentional, but I think back to like Throne of Blood. I think back to like Yojimbo, Ran. Like it's very much a traditional samurai movie through and through. Even like the characterization of Atsu, which has the ability to grow really well. I've actually really enjoyed the Wolfpack characterization with all of the supporting characters. I thought that was a really interesting concept. I did not know that was really going to be in the game as much as it is. I thought for the most part it was just going to be her by herself and you don't have anyone to rely on. And I think that with, again, spoiler free of everything, with what I can only assume are the twists that are happening in the story for me currently, it does make it seem like, okay, the second half of this game is going to be more interesting. And I do find it interesting that I guess it's more so, it's a double-edged sword, right? In the sense of their delivery with, we are going to immediately throw you into the world, and it is immersive and has all of the organic discovery kind of unfold. The narrative unfolds, and everything's subtle, right? It's all like, especially viewing it in black and white, and being forced to like read the subtitles like nonstop for everything. Every single characterization for like Atsu and for other characters is very small, and they're like intentionally holding back is how I personally feel that they're doing currently.
Yeah.
I think that it's deeply personal based on how much you're putting into it. Like if you're intentionally trying to do her memories or not.
Yeah.
Which could even lead to different interpretations of the character.
They're layering it on very much so, where I very much was expecting a more traditionally told, where, you know, like you are getting the flashbacks a little bit more frequently, but like, yeah, like I've noticed that there are some that just pop in, and it does seem like it is more random, and like it is tied more to like your level of like how far you're going out to like, you know, experience and enjoy, like, you know, and learn more about her.
Yeah, I would definitely say that as far as my experience with bloating, I personally feel as though this game does not have as much fat on it. I feel as though, and I can't speak to it in comparison to Assassin's Creed Shadows, which, you know, the elephant in the room is that we know Ubisoft games have that. We know that Shadows is probably like $200 plus.
Yeah.
But they're both intentionally trying to do different things, right? And so with that, I find that when I think about Ghosts of, you know, Yotei, with what I'm excited for, even wanting to get back to it, right, is that I'm playing it in these, I want to say like 2 to 3 hour chunks, these quick bursts. And for me, it's hitting simply because I find that it doesn't have the sense of it needing to be a collectathon. I feel like it almost intentionally wants to slow down. I feel as though it wants you to take everything in. And I did think that she was, and I know this was mentioned a little bit ago, but with Jin being a bit more stale, I was almost worried that was going to happen with the main character in this story, and that it was just going to be your traditional revenge story of all her purpose is just to kill, and that is it. And I'm finding a lot more depth there than I originally expected. I think that this almost feels like an emotional trauma story than a personal vengeance story.
Yeah.
And granted, maybe I'm viewing this a little bit more dramatically because I'm seeing it through the lens of the Kurosawa mode. But it's one of those things, like for me, it's hitting a lot harder as it being a tragedy almost, that like she's forced into this at all. And it's been really interesting seeing that. But as far as like missions and gameplay mechanics go, I do think that it is almost a hindrance to themselves, where they have such good main missions that are kind of tied behind what order are you going to do them in. And it can be a bummer where, you know, if you do go down the road of, all right, so this individual's main missions is not as interesting, or the pacing feels off. That can definitely hurt, especially after what I felt like was a really good introduction and a really good beginning sequence that really set the stage and kind of set the tone. And so it would definitely be unfortunate if someone goes into it expecting it to keep that consistency, and then they immediately go, oh, this is not the pace that I was looking for, or this is not hitting the way that I was hoping it would. That would definitely be unfortunate, because I feel like when it is firing on all cylinders, it's hitting really well for me, and I'm really enjoying that side of it so far.
Yeah. No, Matthew, any closing thoughts on Ghost before we move on to break?
No, I mean, like, I think that, you know, we've summed it up pretty well. I mean, I think that, yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes. I think you know, Bruce, like you were saying, like the pace of what it is billed as and what it shows right up front. I mean, we all know what, you know, from a game that is an open world game, that is unsustainable. You know, it has to have it has to have more than that to really sustain itself throughout its runtime. And other good open world games do that in different ways. In this case, I think the Erika Ishii's performance for Atsu was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I think in Shadows, for me, it's the historical aspects of the world. Every time you round a corner, you see some kind of new real world historical building or landmark that the game will tell you about in the codex. Like, that goes a long way for me, and I think something that Ubisoft doesn't really get enough credit for. But yeah, I mean, for right now, in the first 14 or 15 hours for me, the performance of the main character and the sort of beautiful world, and just getting to exist in that, and we haven't really talked about the combat. Combat is kind of awesome. I think they did a lot of good improvements over Tsushima. I like the different weapon system that they have here, where you're getting different kinds of weapons. But yeah, overall it's real good, and I'm real interested to see how it continues in the second half.
Would you say this is you should buy this? If you have a PlayStation 5 and you're looking for an exclusive, or if you're just looking for something, outside of, because Shadows is multi-platform, is this something that you should look forward to getting right now? Is this a wait for it? What do you all think?
I don't know. This generation, I feel like we could do a whole other podcast on the PS5 generation as a whole, where I would say, like, within the context of, I think a good comp would be Horizon Forbidden West, which feels weird that, when did that come out? 2022, and this is 3 years later, so it's like it feels weird comparing it to that game, but it almost feels like very similar to that in terms of just the scale and the scope, and it kind of just feels like we've hit a point with Sony first party. This is just what, it feels like God of War Ragnarok is kind of the peak of what we're gonna get from, just this industry in its current state. And obviously there's a whole lot that we can talk about, with the retractions that are happening in the workforce, and teams are scaling down. So it's we're not going to get these big grandiose productions, like a God of War Ragnarok, or at least those are going to be fewer and more far between. So I think in the context, that context of Sony first party, you've got a PS5, yeah, go out and spend the $70. It's a good open world game. I can't speak specific to, Assassin's Creed, which one I would get, but I mean, I think, the inspiration is there. I think, it really will go as far as the story takes it. Where I think if it can really nail some of the themes that it's at least introducing, I think some of what your concerns were, Matthew, the area in the Oni sort of starts to introduce and layer on some of those things. So I'm interested to go to some of the areas and take on more of the Yotei 6, because I have the feeling that each of these are going to layer on different themes and elements to Atsu's story and as a character, and sort of make her more of a tragic figure. So I mean, I think, if you've got a PS5, I would say buy it. But I'm curious to think what you guys think.
I think that if you don't have a PlayStation 5, if you've gone this whole generation without buying a PlayStation 5, this isn't, I mean, again, I haven't finished the game, so this is all major asterisk here, but I don't think this is going to change your mind. If you haven't been impressed by the other exclusives this generation, or have just simply waited for PC ports or whatever, I don't think this is a console seller. But yeah, I mean, if I think, and again, I think this is we could have a whole other conversation about this. I think if you like open world games, just like with Assassin's Creed Shadows or Tsushima or Horizon or any of these other big open world games, you pretty much already know if you're going to like this or not. It is basically what you think it is, for better and for worse. So yeah, I think if this looks like a game that you're going to enjoy, yeah, you should go ahead and buy it because you will.
Yeah, 100%. I really have a lot of the same opinions that both of you share. It's not revolutionary. If you've seen enough samurai movies, you kind of already have an idea of it. If you like PlayStation first parties, you kind of already have an idea of it. If you're a fan of Sucker Punch in general, I mean, you know that it's just more Ghost of Tsushima, for better or for worse, right? I think that it's a better game. I think that if you have a PlayStation 5, this is a must buy. I think that this is absolutely something that you should be getting for this season. I don't think this is a waste of $70, which I know is a lot nowadays, and that you could easily just go buy like Hades 2 or something else that is half the price.
Don't get me started on Hades 2, bud.
And that's the thing, right? Is like, that's a lot. But I think if it's remotely interesting, if you like samurais, if you like open world games, I think that this is exactly in the ballpark of what you're looking for. This game looks beautiful. It's very polished. I have not had any issues with it. I'm playing it on hard mode. It is very intense. It is almost like I'm playing Ninja Gaiden. That is the vibe that I am feeling from it. It is literally you die in 1 or 2 hits, which is accurate to both movies and in real life with what you're going for with like the draw mechanics and stuff. And so with that, I personally think that this is worth getting. If you are just a gamer, period, it's a little bit harder of a buy. I would definitely say wait for it to go on sale first. I think it's a game that you want to pick up in 2025. Just maybe wait for Black Friday. There's plenty of other games that kind of keep you afloat, and you're probably already playing 4 or 5 of the new releases that have already come out multi-platform wise. Or you're playing through Assassin's Creed Shadows, which, also shout out to the discovery mode. Ubisoft is killing it. They are fantastic. But I am really enjoying this smaller, more self-contained personal story.
Yeah, no, that's Ghost of Yotei, y'all. It's PS5 exclusive. I'm sure we'll have much more to say about it come Game of the Year season and, end of year. Looking back on 2025, it's definitely one of the bigger releases. Seems to be a commercial success as well. I saw something floating around that it was one of their fastest selling, or if not the fastest selling since Spider-Man 2. So definitely seems like they got another critical hit on their hand. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, but when we come back, Bruce is going to talk to us about Sonic Racing Crossworlds, and I am going to talk about Megabonk. We'll be right back. And we're back. Bruce, tell me about Sonic Racing Crossworlds. This is, of course, the latest Sonic kart racing game from Team Sonic. Some are saying that it's the best kart racer of the year. Is there any weight to that?
Yeah, the source is me. I say that. I 100% think that Sega's latest kart racer is a standout. It's better than Mario Kart World. Obviously, this is my opinion, but I genuinely think that this is one of the very few games that Sega has put out that really shows confidence. A lot of their releases lately have just been getting back on track, getting more support publicly. And when you see the amount of advertising this had and the amount of direct advertising, directly calling out Mario Kart World, being like, hey, that game is mid. This game is great. And I really agree with that. I think that it's content rich. I think that it's even its DLC model, right? It does not technically really need DLC. I think that you have hundreds of customization options. And so the perk system is really fascinating and it's unique, especially for the genre. I think that with 39 tracks, 24 characters at launch, as far as the base roster is concerned, it has tons of challenges. It has tons of multiplayer modes. It has a lot of different features, and the core gimmick actually works, and it's not a next gen only thing. This is a game that's cross platform play with other consoles, as far as there's so far not a Switch 2 version out, but it's on everything else. And it is great. Team Sonic Racing came out 2019, was okay. That's one of those games where it comes out and you go, yeah, Mario Kart is the king. Like, Mario Kart just does everything better. That's fair. And this game really took that personally. I think that going into it, you need to know that there's a strong emphasis on drifting. They really want you to build up speed. A lot of the courses are tighter. The fact that there's only courses, there is no open world. And once you'll have lots of different ramps that you can do mid-air tricks. And there's going to be rings, similar to the coins, where it increases your maximum speed. And all of the item capsules make sense, both in universe and also if you have no idea about what's going on with Sonic at all right now. Very simple things as far as you can tell, oh, this one's pretty much the red shell, like that kind of thing. But you have so much freedom and flexibility. So whoever's in first, after the first lap, gets to choose. There's either a static, so you have these two rings that pop up, think Sonic movie, where it's like a portal. And on the left is going to be, here is a track that you know what it is. And then on the right, it is random. And that's what the Crossworlds is directly referring to.
So that's like the gimmick here.
Yes, that is 100% the gimmick. It is a seamless transition. So the moment you go through the portal, you are in that other world. And it's usually meant to be a very visually different, like it's meant to have you go in through it and be like, whoa, this is like a completely different world. Usually you're either just immediately having like some giant monster like a kraken or a dragon or something else coming at you, or it's meant to be, oh, now you're in the middle of the sea, or you're flying. It is meant to be a immediate out of the gate.
So it's not like, transporting you to like an entirely different track. It's more so like the Omega version of like a Smash stage where it's like this pre-canned, like when you go, or is it truly random in a sense where like you don't know what's going to happen?
So there is, there's two sides to that. There's multiple of these tracks that are they're just one track length. And so once you've gone through it once you've gone through one of them, there's like a casino zone themed one. Once you've gone through that, if you get it again, the layout of it. It's not random in that sense. But it could be random in the sense of if you go through the random portal, or if the player one goes through the random portal, then you are unsure which it's going to choose.
Got it.
And so one reason why is because of the actual customization and the vehicle customization. So there is multiple versions of cars that are either for speed, performance, power, and there's also hoverboards. So you can choose they're called extreme gears in reference to the Sonic Riders games from back in the day. But you are not restricted to a single vehicle. You can choose all kinds of different combinations. You can customize the design of it. You can even add logos. There's a lot of really kind of silly brand deals as well. I find that I have like a Haichu on the back of one of my cars.
Love that.
But yeah, it's interesting to know that speed, acceleration, power, handling, and then boost is the hoverboard. And so there's 45 different vehicles in total, and you can kind of combine different parts to create custom vehicles. And they all transform. So bringing back the concept from Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed, they will turn into a plane, they will turn into a boat. And so because of that, based on what you have, it requires more skill and strategy as far as like, all right, what am I good at? Do I want to go on this optional route that's going to take me through where I can fly? Or do I want to stay on the main course where I can try and power through and drift into and hit other players? Because, you know, same thing goes when you're at first. If you can see, all right, if I go into this one world for track 2, it may put me at a disadvantage because it may be, all right, now I'm going to be, you know, having it be a boat for a little bit. And so,
yeah, that was my like main complaint with like Mario Kart World, was that like it while the tracks felt wider and like had more opportunity for exploration, like it still felt like there was like one, like it didn't encourage, you know, player creativity in the way that it seems like Sonic is doing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept because that only lasts for the one lap. Once you go back to lap 3, it goes back to the original course. However, that layout is different. So that final lap adds new hazards or different paths for additional shortcuts. So there's multiple levels to like understanding the tracks. It's not just like a straight line, which I know was a complaint for a lot of Mario Kart World players, or just uninspired tracks. It really feels like everything's just kind of pushed up to 11 almost. There's a couple tracks that are relatively safe where it's meant to be more nostalgia. There's definitely some that are meant to be like you know, like Radical Highway from Sonic Adventure 2 has some where there's one segment that is literally just from the original Sonic Adventure 2 game, and that just requires you hitting like 20 speed boosts in a row. But as a Sonic player, like that's fine because it's obviously a reference to something.
Yeah.
I will say that the as far as the core gameplay goes, not just the track, the game feels tight. It feels really good to play. There's tons of options as far as the flexibility goes. If you want, you know, driving assistance on, and then also those customization options as far as the actual perk system goes. So for me, I like to have it to where I get, just as an example, right? If I drift, my drift meter goes up higher to where I can get a little boost quicker. And then when I'm in the air, I can do tricks faster. So that way I can get a speed boost when I land better. And there's hundreds of options. And I'm sure someone out there has done the math of how many that really leads out to. But yeah, you can have some where, you know, let's say you want to focus on defensive items or offensive items. You can choose those to, you know, when you hit an item box, they generate more. So it's that kind of strategy as well. It's not just purely random as far as like even hitting those. And so the game rewards you playing it. There's lots of different difficulty speed options. There's a really fascinating rival system, which whenever you go through another Grand Prix, there's a randomly selected character that could be your rival for that Grand Prix. And you'll get a special bonus if you accept that, or if you go towards even a harder one, or you can just choose any of them, which I actually appreciated because that way you can hear really fun interactions between the players that you want. Obviously, Sonic and Shadow are going to have interactions to where they're just trash talking each other in a different way as opposed to like Sonic and Amy or whatever, right? And so that really hits at like the core of, you know, oh, it still recognizes the characters, and a big part of it is the characters. There's not a giant story mode. There's hintings of a story, but it kind of understands, it knows what you're there for. Team Sonic Racing, I think its biggest issue was that it also tried to do a story mode legitimately, and that kind of just failed for them.
Yeah, no, it seems like, you know, beyond, like, I mean, based on what you're describing and like just in the sheer volume of what's here, like it really is like kind of like in everyone's here, like in everything in the kitchen sink kind of approach where like, yeah, sure. Like, why the hell not? Let's get Steve from Minecraft. Let's get Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Let's get, you know, all these characters and like throw them in here. And like, it really does seem like, you know, they're taking that approach as well, like layering on like things from the previous entries and just sort of expanding on it and not, it seems like with Mario Kart, they went for more of like a reimagining or like or more of a foundational change to the gameplay. Whereas this one feels more like of a, you know, Smash Ultimate, a culmination of like sort of like all these previous entries in the series.
100%. I would definitely say that this is a more fine-tuned version of what people were kind of hoping Mario Kart World was going to be originally. You know, there's a really interesting, complex battle mode for both teams and free-for-alls, which those are all pretty interesting. And then there's also I got to give a shout out to the music. The whole jukebox like gimmick that they have where you get tracks and music. Obviously, even if you don't like Sonic, most people can agree the music slaps. They have gone out of their way to get all of the vocal songs from old games and like remaster a lot of them, like from Sonic R, a lot of iconic songs from Adventure 2. They've done a ton of collabs for some reason. Creepy Nuts has an exclusive song for this that they made for it. Hatsune Miku and a bunch of other Vocaloids.
Miku is a driver.
Miku is a driver, and she, whenever you pick her, she does her own instrumental theme of whatever it would be in the background normally. But yeah, she made 5 additional songs for this.
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, there's a lot of really cool, you can choose what music plays, so you can just toggle a favorite and just have that playlist be played during any of the laps. And so a lot of it is pretty much made like for fans by fans. They went really hard into being like, hey, Sega characters, there's going to be one free every month. The paid DLC is going to be crossovers from other brands, and the season passes are $7. They wanted to make it affordable and fan friendly. I'm excited to see characters like Mega Man and Pac-Man. Their tracks look cool. It's very interesting. A lot of this was the developers behind this game specifically, because Sonic Team's so large. The initial D racing games, the arcade games. Those guys did this one a lot. So you can definitely get that this feels like an old Sega arcade racer. And that is awesome. It really feels like we're back.
You've sold me on it quite a bit, and yeah, I think you know, someone who like enjoyed Mario Kart World, but it didn't quite satiate that. It's definitely got me looking toward this. That's Sonic Racing Crossworlds, everyone. It's everywhere. I just confirmed it. It is PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and all the Switches and PC. So go get it. You literally have no excuse not to. But yeah, no, that's going to give me an opportunity to hard pivot here into what I've been killing time with, which is Megabonk. For those of you who don't know what Megabonk is, let me tell you about what Megabonk is. First of all, I don't have my Steam Deck handy, but when I most recently checked, this thing was constantly pushing like Hades 2 numbers in terms of like concurrent players. We're like averaging like 75,000 to like 100,000 concurrents here. It's a game that I would say infected my TikTok feed, and it was just like everything all of the TikTok streamers were playing, and so I had to give it a try. So Megabonk is, if I had to use 2 games to describe it, it's Vampire Survivors and Risk of Rain 2. So if you're not familiar with either of those 2 games, Vampire Survivors it's essentially a roguelite. You're doing runs and, you know, more or less randomized runs where you're picking up different power-ups and, you know, sort of like creating these randomized builds to like take on like an endless wave of enemies. The key with with Vampire Survivors and sort of the survivors likes the genre that it sort of has sort of spawned is that they're like think a twin stick shooter, but like it just kind of auto shoots. So like the attacks happen automatically. That's the case here. Where it draws inspiration from Risk of Rain 2 specifically is that it it's more the perspective, right? It's a 3-dimensional world. It's random, it randomly generated. And it's similar setup in that you have to find the boss spawn and then spawn the boss, defeat the boss. But then there's this balance between, like powering up and like leveling up to a certain point, but giving yourself enough time to, actually defeat the boss before like you get overwhelmed by like the endlessly growing wave of zombies. Like it just kind of reaches, I want to say it's like 10 to 15 minutes you have to do these runs, and by the end of it, it's like it just becomes too much, and it's meant to, you either are meant to beat the boss and move on, or fail, run out of time and fail. Let me tell you guys about the secret sauce. The secret sauce of this game is just the humor. It's just Gen Z brain rot, like just peak Gen Z brain rot humor. What do I mean when I say that? My favorite character, my go-to, my main, if you will, is the Mega Chad. He is just a shirtless, I mean, just, like when you think of the Giga Chad meme, right? Like just think of a shirtless dude with like a, just a really well-defined jaw. His primary method of attack, his primary weapon is his aura, and you are upgrading his aura, making it more larger and more deadly and more powerful. So just to give you an idea of like the vibe that this game is going for, right? Like it is very much like, a repetitive ass, like just, roguelite, Vampire Survivors like, but really the draw of it has been the sense of humor and just like the characters, the different, like the ways that you're powering up and leveling up is like really wacky and zany, and like almost feels like it's meant to give the impression that you're breaking the game. And so I think they do a really good job of playing with it. So I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Dude, it looks so fun.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a good bit of this like on Twitch. So I've and it's also, I will say, like a pretty good game to watch. You can just kind of zone out and like watch the person get into the flow of this game. Like it's a surprisingly good viewer experience, I would say, because I didn't find like, I don't know, I guess Vampire Survivors was okay, but I think this is a better viewer experience.
It's a better looking game. It has a stronger like sense of identity. Like it really leans into the sense of humor. Like, yeah, I appreciated Vampire Survivors for what it was, but yeah, I think this just has a stronger sense of identity. But you were going to say something else.
I was going to say, like, I mean, so I've only ever watched this on mute, so that's interesting to hear what you said about the like the soundtrack or whatever. Is this voiced? Like, is there, like, are there any character voices or anything going on here?
No, each character has like their like theme song or like a collection of songs that plays in the background, which is like a cool, like unique way. Like, I think one thing that the game does really well is that it does a better job than say like a Vampire Survivors of like encouraging you to experiment with the different, like characters. Like each character has sort of like a different movement style, since these levels are taking place in like 3-dimensional levels. Like I think a big differentiator between it and like something like a Vampire Survivors is just like the movement. One of the characters, and like what really kind of drew me into the game initially, was the Calcium character. He's essentially just a skeleton that rides around on a skateboard throwing bones at enemies, right? So like just having that and like simulating the experience of just like skateboarding through this level feels totally different than just like Mega Chad, who's like walking around like slowly with, who's more reliant on like the aura, versus someone like Calcium, who's like a little bit more nimble and, so like it experiments, or it encourages you to experiment with the characters, in a way that I think lends itself well to being like a really good viewer experience. And so, yeah, I mean, like it's not voiced, but it is, I think each of the characters like have enough personality that like, I wouldn't say they needed to be voiced.
And there's, like, what is there that carries over in between runs? Can you dig into like the progression a little bit? Like I think it's pretty light, but what exactly do they have?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, and if you're familiar with any of these kind of like, you know, survivor like games, I would say it's similar to that, where I wouldn't even say it's things like permanent health boosts or upgrades. It's more like the rate at which the currency drops that you're buying permanent upgrades, and then you're buying things like the ability to skip and oh god, what's the exact, I'm trying to think of like the exact terminology, because it's intentionally weird, the way that they sort of like, I will say, like, my biggest gripe with the game so far is that the you can get screwed by RNG in a way that like is frustrating and is common for a lot of these kind of games. And the methods in which that they, you know, the mechanisms that they give you to sort of mitigate that aren't very effective. So like, it's a good example here where like you're buying like the ability to skip a like a level up bonus if none of the options appeal to you, where it's like, well, why am I skipping it? We're like, and like for some reason skip and re-roll are two separate things that you can sort of spec into. So to answer your question, I think that's probably the weakest part of the game, is sort of like the sort of permanent, like the sense of permanent upgrades and permanent progress, especially coming from something like a Hades 2 where like every run felt super consequential. I'm having a lot of wasted runs, a lot of frustrating runs, especially like, I think my other main complaint is I don't know if the Risk of Rain 2 influence like serves it well, in that like I think it adds a layer of complexity, like having to hunt down the boss portal on top of managing all of the other things. Like I feel like if I have to go hunt down the boss portal, like I need more time on the clock. Like I feel like it's just it's asking too much of you too quickly, and it's not giving you enough in between runs to feel like you're making a dent and getting stronger in between.
Makes sense. But I mean, you know, I think this is like a first time developer. I don't know if they've made anything else, but I mean, it certainly sounds like they've hit on a winning sort of twist on like what seems to be a pretty emerging genre that I imagine that we'll be seeing a lot more of.
Yeah, it's definitely the most, like, I wouldn't say it's the most like polished one that I've played, and I think there's more room for improvement, I think, on that front. I forget that if it's early access or if it's a 1.0 release. I think it's a 1.0 release, but it
looks like it's 1.0. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but you know, like, you know, that it's like with all things, right? Like they're I know they're going to improve on things. They're going to listen to the community. It seems like they have a very big and vocal and very active community here. So I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, like I think, you know, stuff like that can be fixed and ironed out on the back end, but in the meantime, I definitely think it's something that I'll pop in and out, and you know, I think for me the fun has definitely been unlocking the characters. Like there's, you know, like the achievements are all very funny. Like it's the most I've laughed out of a video game in a long time. So it's one that I'll definitely pop into just to keep unlocking stuff and getting that stuff. But you know, we'll see how much it keeps my attention with some of the more like frustrating elements with the progression. But yeah, guys, that is going to do it for our show today. We appreciate y'all joining us. Bruce, thank you for joining us as well. Where can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a great time, and I am Local Alien Party on pretty much everything. Trying to get active on Blue Sky and hopefully maybe reactivate some writing again that I'll be posting on there.
Yeah, man. Well, anytime you want to join us, you're more than welcome to. We appreciate your perspective and look forward to having you in future episodes if you'll join us. Matthew, I guess I don't really have anything for you to say, but you know, I guess for on behalf of Matthew and myself, Thank you guys for listening and joining us. If you haven't already, follow us, give us a subscribe on whatever podcast service you're listening to us on. Leave us a review if you really like us, you really love us, you want to let us know how much you like us and love us, please do. You can listen to past episodes and follow us on all of our social handles at timekillerspod.com. And yeah, that's all I got to say in terms of like self-promotion. So with that, guys, I'm going to let y'all go. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you on the next one.